mean no. When a woman says no, it means no. And so they need to report it. Our children are suffering. They have been raped. Their future is being destroyed. So we want this to be 365 days, not 60 days of activism.
Abraham, what do you make of some of these girls are looking at?
To a certain extent, you can blame the police for not taking their stand against perpetrators of rape in this country because there are so many allegations.
I mean, they have come to protect. They have come to protect, and this is getting very fiery. Their mothers are out here to support them.
Thank you for the men who told us with an open heart to fight against rape. And we want all the men in the gathering here today, all the men that been here for the last 3 days to tell another man that rape is wrong. We want justice. We want justice.
Ministers' petition is on their desk. We will stay here. We keep here to meet the president. We must meet the president before we leave from here. Or else we have 3 days. If they don't come in 3 days, we have another day. We will protest until rape ends in Liberia now.
Good afternoon to our audiences in the US and good evening to all of those in Liberia. Welcome to Focus on Faith and Gender, a program hosted by the Women's Advocacy and Resource Center. I am your host, Reverend-elect Banty Brownell. We thank you all for joining us today for our second segment on a conversation with men on Liberia's SGBV epidemic. The Women's Advocacy and Resource Center is a faith-based organization with a mission to advance gender equality, as well as eliminate violence against women through faith-based approaches. This month, in recognition of Sexual Assault Awareness Month, we decided to do a 1-month forum spotlighting male activists and advocates working on issues of sexual and gender-based violence. And today we will continue our segment entitled A Conversation with Men on Liberia's SGBV epidemic. But before we begin, I want to issue a trigger warning. Our discussion will focus on sexual violence and the rape of women and children. This content is very disturbing, so I encourage you to prepare yourself emotionally beforehand. Thank you. The clips you just saw during the intro were of an anti-rape protest in Liberia. Men Against Rape during the 16 days of activism, and then another protest regarding the More Than Me case. And then the End Rape protest that took place August of 2020. During the 3-day August 2020 protest, it was reported by Al Jazeera and Liberian media outlets that thousands of Liberian citizens came out to the streets of Monrovia to have an anti-rape protest in the wake of increasing incidences of rape against women and children. Dressed in Black and carrying signs and anti-rape slogans, thousands marched towards the Liberian Legislative Building on Capitol Hill to present a petition with several recommendations, including increased judicial funding to punish perpetrators, more health funding to help victims, and the strengthening of the judicial system for trials of rape and other sexual and gender-based violence crimes. It was also reported that there were serious tensions at other protesting points. Anti-rape campaigners were tear gassed by police as they attempted to gather in front of the Liberian Foreign Ministry to present their petition, calling on government to declare rape as a national emergency. In 2018, protesters thronged the streets demanding that the American charity More Than Me be held accountable for the rapes of girls it claimed to be saving from sexual exploitation, after some of them were sexually assaulted by one of the co-founders who was HIV positive. Once again, the protesters highlighted the critical need for improving the justice system and strengthening the legal framework to protect Liberian women and girls from violations and holding perpetrators accountable. So one can say that Liberia has numerous protests, forums, and events focusing on rape and other forms of SGBV. The international community and donor partners have invested millions into initiatives dealing with SGBV. From 2006 to 2011 was the National Plan of Action for the Prevention and Management of Gender-Based Violence in Liberia, with emphasis on minimizing the high rate of GBV in communities, and also providing quality care for survivors. In 2016, we had the government of Liberia and the United Nations launch the joint program on sexual and gender-based violence and harmful traditional practices, with focus on addressing the escalating cases of SGBV and cultural practices affecting women. And currently, we have the Spotlight initiative. But it seems regardless of all of the anti-rape marches, the donor-funded SGBV initiatives, rape and other forms of SGBV remain prevalent in Liberia. According to statistics from the Ministry of Justice, 2020, more than 600 cases of aggravated assault and rape were reported and are currently being investigated. Current stats reports that GBV cases are at 1,525, with SGBV constituting 60% and affecting ages 0 to 35. I would have to say that these stats are not truly reflective of the number of aggravated assaults and rape cases that are currently going on in the country. So the main question today is, why does rape and other forms of SGBV remain a national emergency in Liberia? Today's segment, entitled A Conversation with Men on Liberia's SGBV Epidemic, will deal with that question. I am so excited about the panelists that we have today. We have Counselor John A. Gabriel, who is the former SGB Crimes Unit Director and currently the lead counsel for the Foundation for Human Rights Defense. Welcome, Counselor Gabriel. Then we have Reverend Canon Michael Sie, who is Director for St. Thomas Episcopal Church in Liberia. But before I welcome Reverend Canon Sie, I want to acknowledge his lovely and brilliant wife, Lavette. She is a tireless and dedicated SGBV activist. that I had the pleasure of working with in 2019 when I was embedded in the Ministry of Gender by UN Women. And then we have Dr. T. Nelson Williams II, and he is the Chief Administrator at Connex Oil and Gas Holding and the Executive Director of Servants of All Prayer Assembly, SOAP, an organization that engages men and boys to end violence against women and girls. Dr. Williams is also the Area Director of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Inc. Eta Epsilon Lambda chapter. He and other Alpha Phi brothers recently visited Capitol Hill, the Capitol building, and presented to Honorable Rosanna Shack, Chairperson of the House Committee on Gender Equity, Child Development and Social Protection, a policy brief which includes recommendations for curtailing rape and GBV in Liberia. So hopefully Dr. Williams will have an opportunity to share a little bit about the policy brief. Welcome, Dr. Williams.
Thank you.
Then we have a young man who is the firehouse when it comes to activism and human rights. He is the one calling on the government to end rape in the clip we just saw. Aaron Ireland is a human rights activist and a youth leader who is passionate about youth development and gender equality. He is a founding member of the Affiliation of Women and Children Rights Advocates, one of the groups that organized the anti-rape protests in 2020. He is currently a vice president of the affiliation. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Gentlemen, welcome once again. I am so excited to have all of you serving as panelists today. Your professional experiences and dedication to SGBV activism, human rights, and access to justice is going to enrich our conversation. So since there are 4 of you, I will have each person introduce themselves, talk a little bit about the work that they do and about their organization, and then delve into the conversation and provide insight on Liberia's SGBV epidemic. We will begin with Councillor Gabriel, then move on to Dr. Williams, then Reverend Cannon, Sie, and Mr. Ireland. So Councillor Gabriel, I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Reverend Burnell. It's my pleasure to be on this auspicious occasion tonight. And thank you for the invite. Again, my name is Councillor John A. Gabriel. I am the former director of the SGBV, the Sexual and Gender-Based Crimes Unit of the Ministry of Justice, a position I served for 5 years. And before traveling to the United States, as I am here, I am the lead lawyer for the Foundation of Human Rights Defense. It's a human rights organization that is geared toward advocating for the rights of others. We speak against the evils in society. We are involved with my department as the legal office is responsible to challenge government on those aspects of the rights of others that have been violated. For instance, we have some cases in court. I hate to talk about them because the matters are sub judice, but we sued government in Liberia. We are in court. And by this term, midterm, we'll be going for the hearing of one of the most important cases that we have sued the government of Liberia for. And that, we are just, an organization that is responsible to advocate the rights of people to speak against ills in society. Of course, gender-based violence, sexual gender-based violence is one of the key human rights, violations that we need to address, and we are here today to speak to those issues that affect the aspect of trying SGBV cases, techniques that will help the process, and what will also help the country to draw down on the increment in the perpetration of rape against boys, girls, and women. So it is my pleasure to be here today. I hope that we will achieve some aspect of our objectives while we speak to the issues of curbing rape in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gabriel. Can you talk a little bit about the time that you served as director at the SGBV Crimes Unit? If you can share a little bit about that.
Let me start first with what led to me being appointed as the director for SGBV, especially the SGBV Crimes Unit of the Ministry of Justice. I had been a county attorney in Liberia. I've been a prosecutor all my life. I worked with the Ministry of Justice for over a little over 15 years before coming to the United States of America. And I have prosecuted a lot of cases. While I was in Sino, let me just talk a little bit about one of the egregious cases that I ever tried. And today, if I should say, I'm a bit traumatized as to things that I saw in that trial. It's so troubling to talk about, but for the purpose of this program, let me say a bit about the Marcus Nangwe case. There was a case in Sano that I tried in 2013. The case came from a little town called Yuan Point in Sano County, where a little girl who is now deceased, her name was Tina. Little Tina was 9 years old. I hate to call her name, but she's deceased. Was abused by this defendant, murdered, gruesomely murdered. He killed little Tina and he cut her bodily part into pieces and had them packed into a bag. When we arrived on the crime scene, we were told that the body of the girl was in the little raised bed tied up. So I asked them to open the bag, and they twisted the body, and you could see the hair on the other side rolling, the foot, the guts, and everything. Marcus Nangwe
Counselor, are you there? You're on mute, sir. You're on mute.
After he murdered the victim, he put her bodily parts into a bag. And he had her brought in the center of the town. He was tied, he was arrested by men and was brought to court. And Marcus Nangwe was convicted and we sentenced him for lifetime imprisonment. Because that's all the rape law can do. It says that if the person, that is the extent to which we could punish, okay, lifetime imprisonment. And so Marcus was convicted for assaulting and murdering the deceased, little Tina. Then we came to Monrovia, 2014, coming up to our time of departure. We had several cases, but one of the cases that touched me, I will talk a little bit about the Macintosh case, the More Than Me case. I know that is very important. We will get there. There was a case from Broadville that involved one Musa Kamara. Musa Kamara sexually abused a little girl to the extent that she was brought to the hospital, and after a few hours, she passed on. She died. And the evidence in this trial was so overwhelming and compelling to the extent that Musa decided to, denied the commission of the crime. And so the onus, the burden was on the government, was on the prosecution to produce the prima facie evidence that will necessitate the conviction of Musa. So Musa was also convicted by the court for 50 years. We sent Musa Kamara was convicted for 50 years. Today he's at the Monrovia Central Prison. There was another fellow whose name I can't recall vividly, but he had abused 3 little kids. He was so cruel. He sexually, one of the kids was 3, and one was 6, and one was 9. And when he abused the 3 kids, one of them was seriously injured, that she was brought to the United States for further medical, medical attention. The other 2 kids passed on. In fact, he inserted his finger in the anus of the 3-year-old girl and ejected, removed from the wall of the intestine, cut the intestine into pieces, and had them put on the ground. She still survived and crawled from the bushes to her mother. When the little girl got to her mother, she asked for a cup of water to drink. And man, when she just drank that cup of water, she died in her mother's arm. He too was convicted. We convicted him for a period of 60 years. He's in jail at the Monrovia Central Prison. The cases are many. I may not be able to name all, but in spite of all of the concerted efforts, because for me, for a person to work consistently and persistently in an area for 5 years, for me, I consider it to be expert. So for the 5 years I worked at the Sexual and Gender-Based Violent Crimes Unit as a prosecutor, I became an expert before coming to the United States to pursue further studies, on trial advocacy. Look, I know that rape is a serious menace in our country, and we need concerted effort to work around it. All of us, including government, civil society organization, and every member of society, needs to rise to the challenge of fighting rape. Our country has dwindled so much into poverty and desperation to the extent that people will see their children raped and they accept little dollars. I had those kind of experiences on many occasions where sometimes I used to go in the community and threaten to even arrest people who were in the business of compromising rape cases. One of the key things that I think we need to focus our attention on as fighters against this menace, this evil that has crept into our country and has devoured a lot of young girls and boys, is that we need to increase our publicity strategy. Our publicity strategy in Liberia is poor. You don't have too many radio stations in the Southeast and other part of the North and the West. We need people to create like a mobile radio system where they will move from place to place using megaphone, using other means to disseminate the information. We went to a certain part of Nima, and I was talking to some chiefs who were again on our campaign to propagate the rape law and educate people as to the consequences of rape and how it affects the family. A chief asked me and said, "My friend, let me ask you a question." I said, "Okay." He said, "So when a woman is 12 years old, y'all say she reached the level of sex yet?" I said, "Yes." Then he said, "But I got some women who 12 years old, they got children." I said, "But they were violated." That the body chemistry of a woman, according to medical experts, is not mature until she turns 18. It is the person is not a mature person prepared to give birth to any child unless the person's bodily part is mature. I'm sure the framers of the law were thinking in that direction, for which they decided to reduce the age of the victim to 17 and less than 18, right? So I believe that there are folks in northern Liberia and southeastern Liberia who don't believe that when a child is 12 years old, she's not mature for sex. They don't believe it. They don't feel that sex is anything to the girl child, even if she's 9 years old. If you want to arrest, you'll meet with a lot of resistance. It is a talk of war. It's a tough game to convict a perpetrator who has assaulted maybe a 13, 14-year-old girl, 12-year-old girl, to convict that perpetrator in the Southeast. It's not easy. There were times that we had to transfer the cases from our jurisdiction to other jurisdiction, all because of the mentality, the mindset of the locals. And you don't blame them. We blame ourselves because at the time, we had not been able to create or propagate the necessary information that will lead to educating those people to know how evil, to know the dangerous consequences that lie behind raping a woman, raping a little girl, needless to talk about a woman or a boy. They didn't know it. They have not been educated to it, so they don't know what it means for a girl or a woman to be raped. So we need to do all we can. We need to do all we can to put a machinery into place that will help to alleviate this problem. We have had demonstrations. Now, let me tell you what led to, if I'm opportune to proceed, let me tell you what led to the misunderstanding that involved the Macintosh case. I was the director of SGBV. I was one of those persons that the women were agitating against that compromised the Macintosh case. I had not. Macintosh died in prison. Macintosh was this fellow who was seen as a hero in the West Point slum community. Macintosh had gone and collected people, girl children, and had them placed, according to him, quote unquote, on scholarship, attending the Mode and Me school. And when those girls were there, least did we know that Macintosh was in the business of sexually abusing the people's children. He had abused about 9 of the girls. When the news came out that Macintosh had abused those girls, he was indicted and was taken to court. While we were at the trial of Macintosh, there were demonstrators that had not passed the Monrovia Central Police Station. They were agitating that Macintosh be released by the government. We were at trial on that very day when the demonstrators were in the street The jurors were listening to all that were being said out there, and you will not believe that we nearly lost the case. It was 8 against 4. We had a hung jury. We said, well, thank God we didn't lose it. We sent him back to jail. When we came back for the second trial, we realized that, again, the same trouble would have arisen if we had not done, our level best to ensure that we have people of quality minds that will see the difference, to be served as jurors. So we went again to trial. When we went, after we got through all of the motions, few days for us to enter the main trial, McIntosh passed out. And when McIntosh died, automatically, in my mind, the case ceased right there to exist, because McIntosh was the key perpetrator. Then they asked me why we did not arrest the lady, one of the key funders of the Modern Means School. She was a white lady. They said why we did not arrest this white lady and the other one called Alexandra. That in fact, the white lady was in relationship and she might have aided and abetted the process of the abuse of the girls. So she facilitated it. There was the need for us to arrest her. There was no evidence. The police had investigated. In criminal matters, the police play a very integral role in the investigation process. The police conducted investigation and they concluded that it was McIntosh who had abused the girls. He was arrested and brought to trial. They did not bring to us this white lady as a facilitator to the crime. But the women took the street and said that McIntosh was not there. McIntosh was somewhere we are releasing, and we didn't have a history of releasing criminals, people who committed such heinous crimes as rape, and to reduce them into the public. That was not part of our record. You can double check that out. So, to our amazement, the women took the street, all because they did not have the needed education. They did not know. We need to increase our educational machinery in our society. We need to ensure that we got a special SGBV radio station that is disseminating at every nook and corner, every village, every town, every hamlet in our country, so that the people will get to know the real meaning of rape and the consequences that follows, consequences that follow rape. So this is where we were when the issue came out about the SGBV crime unit compromising McIntosh and releasing him. They did not understand that truly true McIntosh passed out and he was buried. So let me stop there. Maybe we'll come in after my colleagues have, made their own input into this entire discussion tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Gabriel. We'll move on to Dr. Williams.
Good evening, and Reverend Nell, let me just say thank you for the opportunity to share this evening. This whole rape and gender-based violence is something that we got involved in back in 2009. The group I represent tonight is Servants of All Prayer Assembly, and we started in 2008, 14 years ago, and the goal and the vision and mission of SOAP was to stand in the gap for the nation through prayer, men coming together and interceding for the nation, and also looking for meaningful projects to do in needed communities. And the last aspect was to also get involved in things that involve women and children. And so in 2009, we actually engaged the Ministry of Gender after I saw a story in the newspaper, it was Daily Observer, little Rebecca, 9 years old, who was raped by a family friend. And this person was in their 50s. And then the same week, there was a major case concerning another young lady. And so at the time I said, this is something that I see women crying about, women advocating against. And I didn't see men as part of the process. And as I look at it, I believe that when you do not speak up and you do not take action against certain things that's ills in society, then you are saying that it's okay. So it was under that I took this to the Men of Soap, and we all embrace that we'll be advocates, and we'll also work with the Ministry of Gender in capacities to help. We don't call them victims, we call them survivors, that we will do things to help the survivors. And then it wasn't until later that we said, but listen, we help the survivors. What happened to the guys? Some of these guys are put in prison for a year, some 2 years, some many years after. But what happens is that these people come out and they repeat these acts, these heinous acts. And so we felt that we needed to get involved with the men as well. And at that point, we also established a prison ministry where we went in, had to work with the Ministry of Justice. We had to get approval from the Justice Minister to go into the prisons. We've been to Central Prison, Kakata, Upper Buchanan, Tutmanburg. So we've been to a lot of these prisons. And what we do is we work with the wardens and we identify those that are in for sexual, gender-based violence. And so we have a full program. I'm pleased to say that over the years, we have been implementing partners for UN Women, the International Rescue Committee, the Danish Refugee Council. And today, as we speak, members of SOAP are implementing a program for Plan International in 3 counties and in 5 cities in each county. So right now we're in 15 cities in Nimba, Lofa, and Montserrat. And so we work very closely with our partners in implementing, sending men that stay. In fact, this project we're on is a 10-month project. So it's not overnight. We have to go in, we work with men, we work with traditional leaders, we work with the churches, we work with youth groups. And I will tell you a story. We work with a clan and a traditional chief who was very opposed to this whole idea of SOAP members coming to his community and undertaking such projects that would have women and men working together and not having men being the dominant force in the community. But I tell you, after 6 months, members of the community were passing by and saw this chief washing his wife's clothes. And that was a scene that nobody believed and nobody even thought. So the first thing they said, the chief is crazy. Something happened to the chief. He has a mental breakdown because there's no way that chief will be washing his wife's clothes. And all this was because of the training and the intervention at the community level and getting the chief to understand that this lady also needs rest. She's handling all the domestic chores and you expect more. And so this is dealing with physical abuse and mental abuse. We have incidents where we had young girls that were raped because mothers, they came from single families. They were with their mothers. Mothers in the market shopping, girls home and alone. What happens? Of course, these guys in the community take advantage and rape these girls. In 1 or 2 cases, we had to personally, me and a couple friends, had to convince one of these mothers to let us pay the tuition to send these girls to boarding school at Todi Mission to get them from around that environment. So again, these are things that we've been involved in for the last 13 years, the advocacy aspect. but also actually going in and doing work and working with our various partners. And through this, I know that the first group, UN Women, did a lot of training for our men. So when we first got involved, we didn't know where to start. But with God's help, we had the right international partners that sent our guys for training to the US, South Africa, Sierra Leone. These are the 3 places that they went for training. So when they go into the communities, they know what to do. They are experts in this area. And so in 2010, we established the GBV unit of SOAP. And thankfully last year, because of the effective work that we're doing, we were asked to serve as the lead for the National GBV Task Force. So in the task force, you have medical groups, you have legal groups, you have advocacy groups. So now we all work together. So if there's a survivor that needs legal assistance, then we tap into the legal group. If they need medical help, we have doctors and the medical practitioners to help these people recover from the state that they are in. So we are very happy that you have brought this up. And I also work through Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity on the advocacy aspect. And as we speak, and as you mentioned, we have spoken on the floor of the Senate. We have spoken on the floor of the House of Representatives. We have made our recommendations to the Committee on Gender Activities, and we will follow up because there's some things that we brought up about amending the RIB law, investing in prevention programs. You know, it's always better to prevent.
Dr. Williams, you're on mute.
Okay. Did I just go on mute or from the beginning?
I think for one second or so, you're fine.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. So again, we were able to take these points to the legislature that they must invest in prevention programs and awareness. If we can reduce the number, then we can do better in working with those that are in prison and those that are perpetrators who are out there. We need to go into the high schools, into the schools. You know, with the internet now, these kids have phones. And so they're involved in a lot of things. So we need to start at that level. We have done programs at middle schools. We have done programs at high schools. One of the things we also took to the legislature is strengthening the support for victims or survivors. A lot of them feel abandoned after they have been misused, abused, and then abandoned. There needs to be psychological, physical, medical attention, and then enforcement of the law. One of the things I realized in Liberia is that on the books, we have it. I think we have more laws than we need. But are we implementing, are we enforcing these laws? That's where we come in. When you have police compromising and not upholding the law, when you have family, sometimes parents, as the counselor said, compromising for little money, it makes it difficult. And so we call on more men to join us. The men in the church, the men in the mosque, the men in the workplace. We have situations in the workplace where women cannot be promoted unless they compromise. They are compromised. That needs to stop. That needs to be reported. And when it's reported, it needs to be taken seriously and it needs to be dealt with. Sometimes we need to name and shame. The other day I saw something in the newspaper about one person. But how many others are out there that haven't been showcased to the public? So I'm happy to be part of this discussion tonight. We will continue as SOAP, we will continue as the church, we'll continue as Alpha Phi Alpha, and we'll continue as a man of Liberia who is concerned about what happened to our women and children. This is not happening only with girls. We have boys that have been violated as well. So I don't want us to forget them. With the whole homosexuality and things that are happening in this country, we cannot forget about our little boys, okay? So we have little girls, we have mature women, and we have boys. So all of them need to be our priority as leaders. All of us on this call tonight are leaders. We are called to serve. We are servant leaders, and we must play our role. This is not about money. This is about the lives and the future of our children and our mothers. Thank you. Message complete.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. I want to commend you for the fact that whatever position you have, you utilize that position to focus on issues of sexual and gender-based violence. I commend you for that. If I can ask you to elaborate or just share a little bit more about the prison ministry work that you do. I'm assuming that part of it ties into the rehabilitation of men as well. Is that correct? Of those who have been convicted for rape?
Yeah, so as I said, we build a relationship with the Ministry of Justice. And so that's the only way we get access to the prison. And what we do is to identify those prisoners who are in for rape and gender crimes. And so we have a team of counselors. We have a team of men who are trained in this area. We have musicians. And so when we go, we take the entire team and we get to meet these guys at their level, meaning that we don't go in there with full force to condemn. We go in to look at the root causes of why they did certain things. And so we have our counselors. We go in first. They say when you want to get to the spiritual and you want to get to the root cause, you always need to start with the physical. So we go in, we take the soap. We take the little package for them, the little brown bags, to show them, all right, we're here for you. But then at the same time, once we do that and they feel good that, hey, these guys brought us something, I'm sure I can open up to them. So then they open up to you and you have these conversations. And these guys tell you stories you wouldn't believe. Some of them, they saw their fathers doing it. They saw their grandfathers doing it. And then some of them, they just did it on their own. They were with friends that said, let's do this. Some were gang rape women. And so we get to the bottom of it, and then they do the counseling. They tell them why it's wrong. And when they work with these guys, there's follow-up. You'll be surprised to know these guys in prison have cell phones. So our counselors work with them over a period of time. And I will tell you a success stories. One of the guys that were in prison after we went there, I believe it was in 2017, he got released from prison after 6 months. And guess what? He came and joined SOAP. And so this guy is on fire. He is speaking up against this. And when we go to the prison, we take him. And he said, look, guys, I used to be in here. I did this to women. I was wrong. And I've changed my life. I'm married today. I have a job and I'm supporting my family. Okay? So these are the things that we do to have results, not just to do it to say, oh, we were involved. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to see lives transform. Message complete.
Thank you, thank you. How long is the program normally? Because I remember I was doing some research on engaging men on sexual and gender-based violence with the Carter Center. And one of the things that I did was I went to the central prison in Monrovia to speak to the rapists. And my experience was they didn't really admit, to what they had done. There was issues, with accountability, so they told stories that made it seem as though they were framed for the crime, or if some of them raped someone and that led to murder, you know, they did not include the part about the murder. They would lie and say that, oh, you know, that victim or survivor, you know, is still alive, you know, and so these were, you know, accusations that were not true. And I remember after having these conversations with these convicts and so forth, I had a conversation with Counselor Gabriel, and he gave me the background information of each of these rapists that I have spoken to, you know, and I mean, even some of the stories that he shared, you know, about children being brutally raped and murdered, you know, so it was interesting to see that these rapists were not in a place of acknowledging the wrong that they did. So you had already shared a little bit about, I guess, how you gained their trust, you know, to actually start the rehabilitation process. Have you had experience with some of them who weren't willing to take accountability for the things that they have done?
Absolutely, absolutely. You have some that will try to be hardcore and say, you know, I didn't do this. And then over a period, they will eventually confess. And that's why it's very important for men to be a part of it, because what happens is when you have females go and talk, the first thing is he would think, oh, she's here to set me up. They have sent her here to set me up, okay? And so I'm not even going to open up to her, okay? But we go there brother to brother, and we talk this thing, and nobody's around us. There's no guards. We are men. We go in, we talk, and then, like I said, it's always good to keep and build a relationship. That's part of the process. That's why what we do is never 1 week, 2 weeks, or even a month. The shortest program we have is 4 months, and we go up to 12 months because we realize, look, this person has been doing this thing all their lives. You think it will be a 1 month conversation? No. And so we have to be with them. We have to make the calls. We have to follow up, and you have to get them to the place where they're comfortable. It's like you're infiltrating a gang. You can't go in there and let them know who you are. You have to spend time, let them trust you. And then they begin to share, even take you on trips with them to show you what they do. Okay, so yes, we have some in the beginning that would not share with you. And then eventually they will open up. Is it 100%? No. You will have that 15% that no matter what you do, they're in it for life. Okay? And I'm not going to waste my time on that 15%. If we can get that 85% and we can work with them to transform them to be better people in society that will be remorseful for what they have done to these women, boys, and girls, then I think God will be pleased. Okay? The other folks, they'll have to deal with their conscience. And sometimes, hey, when they get to a certain age and they can't deal with it anymore, then they confess. But we have planted the seed, even if they don't come up front. After we deal with them 3 to 4 months and they don't admit it, or sometimes they admit certain portion, like you say. Oh, you know, it was consensual the first time, but then the second time she said no, and you know, I rape her. You know, so they change the story. So that happens as well. Message complete.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you. So we move on to Reverend Cannon Xie. I'm so happy to have you here today, Reverend Cannon. The previous segments that we've done, the complaint was that clergy tends to be very, very quiet on these issues. So I'm glad to have you here. So I turn it over to you.
Thank you. Grace and peace to you from God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. And thank you, Reverend-elect, for allowing us to be part of this occasion. And we've listened to previous speakers. I think we all share some similar stories. I want to say that besides me being the director of St. Thomas Church, I also had a small NGO called Interfaith-Based Leaders Against Violence, a group of pastors and imams that get together to work on prevention strategy, regardless of our own religion. We set aside our worship, but we come together because what affects one affects us all. So we've been in existence since 2015. We implemented a couple of projects for the on-mill. In that process, we're able to create networks in the various counties, few counties. One success story was the Muslims in the Bassa area said, wow, since we've been in this county, it's been difficult for us to gather under one roof. And today you made it possible for us to gather under that roof. Even in Kakata, Magidi, the Muslims said they would pass before St. Augustine Church. They would not enter, but through our program, they were able to come in to sit and to discuss. Besides that, we've done a couple of programs for also the UN Women, who gave women access to justice. Went to the various community, interviewed the town chief, the people themselves there. We also were successful to produce a toolkit on prevention that has some scriptural backings, easy reference for teaching. We also worked with the UN Spotlight. Father, we are on the National Reference Committee where we represent the religious community. We've done some work also with the Interreligious Council of Liberia. At one point, we were also helping with the gender area there. And we've worked with various groups to ensure that we all fight because the cases are similar. On the church level, we've engaged young people with drugs and substance abuse program. We've introduced something that we've coming up with. We told our parishioners during the Easter, as we go through the Lenten season, if you were doing something more, you would cut down and we'll use the cash that you save. Maybe if you're doing your hair 8 times a month, you reduce it to 4 or so. If you're probably drinking beer or eating more food, and we take the excess there and we got some money, and we want to also do is introducing the first time prison ministry. We are not going to come to the central town. We want to take it to the hinterland. So we'll start with Central Liberia, to be specific, with Banga Central Prison. We want to do hot meals. We want to share also dry goods, and not only that, to sit and to talk and to encourage people behind the bars that there's hope, and to also help change people, praying for them to see themselves, as being agents of change. It happened before, but thank God that Christ's love has transformed me. So these are some of the work we've been doing, and we are a small NGO, not that big, but we continue to partner with people to be able, groupings to be able to do the work. But you see the need to highlight the religious community involvement in ending gender-based violence cannot be overemphasized. In fact, it goes back to days of old where you see in 2 Samuel chapter 1, verse 13 upward, the story of Amnon and Tamar. She was raped by her own brother. And also go down to the first book, Genesis, where Second also raped Dinah. You know the story there, the daughter of Jacob, and how her brothers were angry. So you see clearly that even in the days of old, there's not something strange. It happened during those times. But people then blame these things on lack of knowledge and that it is being entrenched into our culture and traditional permits it. So we should go ahead and carry on with it. But if we fast forward now, what are we doing now as a people, as religious leaders, as faith-based leaders? What are our own role after being equipped with knowledge and all the modernization that is around? It starts with us. Each of us should play a significant role. Each of us can be stakeholders in the process. We are like a table with 4 legs, and if one is broken, that table will not function properly. So, so something that we need to do is about time that we stand up to play a major role. We must, as religious leaders, speak to power, speak the truth to power. We must conscientize our congregation and let them know, because where we stand as religious leaders, we are listened to, people believe in us, our members believe in us, they respect us, they listen to what we have to say. Even in our churches and mosques, these things continue. They are reapers, they are victims there, they are survivors. We have these people that would be the next person in line, all sit down on Friday and Sunday to listen to us. And we must be bold enough to speak against this issue and those who are involved, whether the person is a major giver in they give heftily to the church collection. We must speak against all of those things. And with ourselves, you can be speaking it against it, and you as a religious leader also is seen performing such act. And it's horrible, it's cruel, unspeakable. There's something that you cannot be able to talk about, something that we need to deal with. So as religious leaders, we must all stand up to speak, to ensure that we bring an end to this. So in our sermons, we must conscientize our members on these issues, how we can bring about this change. We know that in the statistics, yes, I follow it. 50% of these people are mostly, the cases reported are based on women also. Like Dr. Williams said, we cannot negate that boys have also been raped, sodomized by men who have money and use as an influence to exploit our young men in society. So it's something that we also need to talk about. Also, another issue is the explicit content that our young people are exposed to on the internet. No censor, even the television, we just leave them what to watch, no cool password. Now our teens, we just go ahead and then allow them to have access to all of these things. So we need to do much as parents. So I'll just wrap it up to say that if I turn over to say, we as religious leaders, I would recommend that we must at least once a month preach on gender-based violence or sexual-based violence, speak out to our congregation. We must have programs that will involve our young people, alcohol and drugs, substance abuse. How do we encourage our young people, the adolescents, in our place of worship? We must also hold retreat for married people to help them, encourage them on good parenting. It's something that we need to do, encourage them so that they will desist from committing this sexual-based violence, acts in our place of worship, our community. We must preach against the culture of silence. We can say probably is domestic violence a sin. We can also say that if the church keeps silent on that, then we are encouraging people to go ahead at all levels to continue to do these things. So we must teach our members and congregations to be agent of change wherever they go. And if they see these things, they must debunk it. They must speak against it to the highest to abolish these things. So I submit.
Thank you, Reverend Cannon. You have mentioned some amazing initiatives to tackle the issue of SGBV from the aspect of a faith leader. Some of these things that you have mentioned, have you already started including SGBV in some of the sermons that you preached? Okay. Yeah, if you can please elaborate on that.
Yeah, I've done that, and have received some backlashes. I don't care. And some of the things I go ahead and say, look, if you want to help a young person, a young woman, a young man, they don't need to sleep with you before you help them. A person could be your daughter. And another thing we need to do is not to just keep silent because it has not happened to us. Who knows who's next? It doesn't mean because it has not happened to you, mean it does not happen. We need to also speak against these things. So yes, the question, I continue to wrap it up in some of my message, that it is not a good thing. We need to graduate from this level.
Okay, thank you. Can you talk a little bit, you talked about the interfaith group that you're in. What is the entire name of that organization so people would know?
Interfaith-based Leaders Against Violence.
Okay, interfaith-based leaders against violence.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And you have people from different denominations and different faiths.
Correct. Coming together, working, studying scripture together and finding the appropriate scripture, not cherry picking scripture that, we talk about this issue, to condemn these issues and to help people who may not be a pastor or an imam, but can pick up this, use it for reference and use it to teach. And also our toolkit that we produce is very easy to use because it has been simplified that any faith-based leader can use the toolkit on prevention to teach in their congregation, to have workshops, Sunday school teaching, youth groupings, whatever occasion that opportunity you have, you can also use the toolkit. So yes.
How can a faith leader access the toolkits that you all are using? How can they do that?
It's something that we have shared with via email and also given hard copies also to based on requests to people, because like I said, we are not a big NGO, we are a very small local NGO, and our dream is to produce enough copies. If we have a donation or money to be able to share with churches around here and box to be able to use them, during their Sunday school or youth, or even on Sunday for Bible study and teaching. Yeah.
Okay. Do you all have forums with other faith leaders on issues of SGBV?
Yeah, we do. And in 2 weeks, we will be going to the Cape Mount area where we hold town meetings with the community there to discuss on this same issue and to how we ourselves also can allow women participation in leadership. And I'll set the example that in my church, every organization, almost out of 1 to 10, we have women heading serious committees, organization giving huge tasks, to allow them to freely participate, without hindrance.
Thank you. I applaud the work you're doing. Thank you, and God bless you. So we move on to Mr. Aaron Ireland. Aaron, are you there? Before this young man starts, let me just talk about what a firehouse he is. I was watching the video that he sent to me from the anti-rape protest, and I was like, wow. It's like we need more young people like this to serve as activists. And to be honest, all of these conversations, it is important to also have the voices of young people. Young people always need to be part of this conversation. So Aaron, I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Am I clear enough?
Yes, you're clear enough. Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, let me applaud everybody who just spoke before me. It's an honor to be seated with all of you. Mr. Sia, I am very much appreciative of you and your wife. You're always like a mother to all of us from General Ministry. So everybody knows Sis Lovette. We can call her ma, so we know the work she's doing as well from that end. It's really applauding. I also want to thank you, Mr. Williams. I've been following SOAP from for a lot of years now when I was fully involved with the task force and all of that, and I've seen most of the great work you've done and all of that. So basically, my name is Aaron Ireland. I am a young man. I'm an activist. I basically work in Liberia from a childhood as member of the Children's Parliament, and then left the Children's Parliament, became a full-time advocate and an activist. I've seen a lot of different protests. I've helped organize a lot of different anti-rape and domestic violence protests in Liberia. One of the major protests that I started was in 2017 when we had these kids. At the time, I was the chairman of the board of advisor for the Children's Parliament. And we had a case of a representative from Grand Julius County called Mariah Willie, who allegedly had consensual sex with his niece, who was 13 years old at the time. So when the case came out to the Children's Division, at the time we had Sata Sheriff, who was the speaker at the time, with a group of young people thought to take on that case, where we called for justice for this little girl who was allegedly raped by her uncle. First of all, before the case got to us, before we even got to get in contact with the little girl and her family, because her family had given her to the representative to bring her to Monrovia to go to school. So, and then he continued to have sex with her. So she was taken from here back to Grand Julius and subsequently to Ivory Coast. So we didn't get to really meet her and take us to court. But then we wrote the speaker at the time, that was Alex Tatter, and we wrote him asking for the recusal of the representative of his position and be sent to court. And that case became very huge enough to a point that some of us got arrested, were sent to jail, were in prison for like 2-3 days. We had to beg international community, the Ministry of Gender, to come to our rescue and all of that. Fast forward to 2019, we did another protest which was called the March for Justice, where we wore skirt and then we marched through the streets of Monrovia and then calling for justice for young girls and boys who were being raped at the time. And then in 2020, when we had this lockdown of the COVID-19 lockdown, there's an increase of rape and domestic violence. I remember between January to March 2020, we had a little over 992 cases of reported rape and domestic violence cases in Liberia. So we as young people, as a youth activists and members of different youth organizations, saw that the increase of rape and domestic violence was very alarming, and we needed to do something about it. I know there were 1 or 2 stories that trickled us while we're in the process of talking about what can we do to help the increase of rape. There was this case of a 15-year-old boy in Cape Mount County who raped a 8-year-old girl, and then her entire intestine and everything in her came out. There was another case of a little 33-year-old baby who was raped in Grand Julius County, and the perpetrator used razor blade to tear open her private part to, do whatever he had to do. There was another case of a man who allegedly raped his stepdaughter, and she got pregnant. There was a case again in Grand Bassa of a girl who was gang raped and her entire rectum came out. So all of these cases was coming to us, and we saw the need to do something about it. So we organized a 3-day rape protest, which involved every different institution in Liberia, all the young people, churches, including pastors, including imams and Catholic sisters, and everybody, including the women of Liberia, the unprotected group. Everybody came together and said that it was enough. Enough was enough. We needed to do something. So we challenged the status quo and took on the street for 3 days. I remember those 3 days were not easy. On the 3rd day, I remember that was when I got arrested in Jalatan, where I was leading an entire group of young people because we are settled at Fish Market that morning, the morning of the 3rd day. And then there was an announcement made by the Minister of Gender that anybody that was in black should get arrested because they didn't know who was who went to protest and all of that. So when we were gathering around Fish Market, the police came and said we should not, gather and stuff like that. So I told a group of young people there at the time that we can be stopped, and because of that, we will march to the U.S. Embassy where we are going to make a statement. And on our way to the U.S. Embassy, somewhere right Charlottetown, there was a huge, pool of the police into the crowd. A lot of us were beaten and arrested, put into the pickup and taken to Central. But on our way to Central, something happened around Total gas station. So the police stopped to get hold of it. And then there was a group of young people who came and just pulled me out of the car. And I joined the group. And so we marched on to the U.S. Embassy where I led the group and we made a statement there. And we also made a statement to the Liberian government through our petition. I know a lot of things have been said about, rape and domestic violence in Liberia. But one thing, when you reached out to me, I was asked to talk about what young people have been able to do. You see, right now in Liberia, I believe young people are doing so much to end, violence and rape and domestic violence in Liberia, irrespective of low support, not enough, support from government and other institutions. There are a lot of young people. You find out that nowadays there are a lot of young people who have the guts, who have that spirit to come out, to speak out, not being afraid of, the police, not being afraid of counterattacks and all of that. Throughout these years, I've experienced a lot with so many young people who have had that courage to say enough is enough. We must do this. We must come out to speak regardless of of everything coming at us. I remember in 2020 we had this 3 days rape protest, and it didn't even take 3 to 4 months. We had another case with this man that has this, how do you call it? This funeral home called Simosis. So there was this case with Simosis and the 3 boys that were missing. We took onto that case again because at the time, the police was not calling, Simosis for questioning. They were calling the family of the 3 missing boys for questioning. So our own concern was, why are you just calling the family of the victims for questioning and you're not calling Simosis, who took these boys out of Monrovia? So we went to the funeral home and staged a very big protest there where the police came again, shoot us with tear gas, arrested us again and took us to Central. And then we had all of these things. Over the years, we've been doing a lot of different protests, making sure that, young people, we create a safe space, because the idea of the women and child rights activists was to create a safe space where young people can be, victims and victim families and survivors can be able to have the opportunity where they can share the story and find justice. So we're working with victims, we're working with victims' family, we're working with different international and local NGOs to ensure that we have support for these different groups and all of that. So over the years, that has been my work, making sure that we're speaking for the voiceless. We're going out there, but not just going out there to protest. We're also getting engaged with community development programs where we're disseminating awareness around domestic violence. What can community do? What can the police do? And all of that. Currently, I'm working with the United Nations Industrial Development Office and the EU on a specific project to bring teachers and students to a table where we can talk about sexual, gender-based violence and rape and harassment, how all of these things affect the schools and the community, people, indigenous people. And this project is in like 9 counties. So just last week, I was in 5 counties in the Southeast That's Grand Juliet, Nimba, Sino, Maryland, Grand Crew, and Riverset, Lofa. So we've been having different trainings with community leaders. We've been having different conversations with indigenous people, with traditional people, because currently you will know that in the space of Liberia, the laws are very complicated, to talk about, especially with traditional people. We currently have two quote unquote conflicting laws. We have the statutory law and the customary law that if you go through most of these different areas of the law, there are a lot of things that conflict with each other that also have been some of the reasons why the fight against rape and domestic violence has been very tedious, because you find out that in the customary law, you go in interior, a 40-year-old man can get married to a 16-year-old girl, which they consider a normal marriage. But in Monrovia, we would consider as a child marriage, which is against the International Convention on the Rights of the Child. So a lot of these things, and that was what happened in Cape Mount when the 15-year-old boy raped the girl. Because of the lack of juvenile justice system, the 15-year-old boy was released after a couple of weeks, and that triggered us a lot. So we've been doing all of these things, working with different NGOs, making sure that rape and domestic violence is being mainstream, and the conversations around these things are being brought to a national, standpoint where we cannot be afraid of whether it's government or it's who. We are not concerned about opposition, imposition, whatever you are. We're making sure that the voices of these victim survivors, because every now and then there are a lot of young people, there are a lot of victim families that come into our inbox and say, this thing happened to my family. I don't know how to go about it. And then we go. Just 3 weeks ago, there was a little girl who was raped to death. And then we had to take on the case again. And then we protested a few days calling for justice. We have been in the area all of these years. And it is our hope that, justice is being served. A lot of people, a lot of survivors have closure. And also perpetrators are being, arrested and go to court and face the law. Because one of the major things that's holding on, sorry, one of the things that we are faced with is the issue of the justice system. We believe that the justice system is very slow. We believe that the government has, that was why in our 2020 petition, there are a lot of things that we lay out in the petition. And we know there are 1 or 2 steps towards, making sure that these things are being handled, but we still believe that there are a lot of things government needs to do to protect young people, to protect our citizens, and to also ensure that justice is being served. So these are work I've been doing in and outside of Liberia, working on different policy implementation. Just in November, I worked with Medical Madar, Liberia, to develop a comprehensive sexual exploitation and abuse model for the schools that they operate in 5 different counties. So this SEA model is going to help, govern teachers in school, govern students and administrators, and also bring the police. How can the police and institution work to ensure that because even all of the awareness we do, there are still reoccurrences of rape and domestic violence, of sexual harassment. So when these things happen, what can they do? What are the policies on the book to help them, tackle these issues on campus and in their schools and in the community and the police? How can the police work with the community people and the family and the school to ensure that perpetrators face the law and survivors are being supported and have the relevant support that they need to go through the entire process of domestic violence and rape. So generally, that's what I have been working on. I've been everybody in Liberia that know me know that I've been very vocal when it comes to rape, and I've never been afraid of or shy away from, speaking out or going to the streets and making sure that we speak out for the voiceless. And that's something I have passion for. I'm very, very much driven. And all of the young people who are my friends, and we all work together to ensure that these things that affect Liberia, the next generation of Liberian youth should have a safe space where we can live, we can work, to ensure that we respect the space of women, we respect young girls in our society, but also respect boys and all of that. So yeah, so that's what I've been doing. Sorry, I don't know what I took too much time, but yeah.
No, Aaron, you were completely fine. Like I said, I commend you and I applaud you for the work that you do, and your last statement, well said. Regarding the awareness and a lot of the protests that you organize and so forth, what would you say would be the success stories, and whether or not they result in success stories? What have been the changes based on the awareness and the protests that you have organized?
Well, for me individually and the entire team that I represent, we believe that the road to ending rape and domestic violence in Liberia is yet still long, but we cannot also play blind eyes or ears to the work that has been done by every individual, all stakeholders, every young person, youth groups, and other stuff. If we are to point out specific things that we feel like has been progress so far, number one thing is the young people of Liberia set history in 2020. Apart from politics, there has never been a social justice protest that has been as large as what we did in collaboration with every other organization working in Liberia, in the Women of Liberia, or 3 days rape protest where every day people were coming. People were not just coming. For us, we didn't see it as people coming because they wanted to be in a picture. We saw that people were coming because they saw what was happening. So I believe the protest in 2020 even brought to a larger extent the conversation around domestic violence in Liberia and increased the awareness. Right now in Liberia, I mean, a lot of people know what rape is. A lot of people know at least what to do when they hear about rape case, or they know what is it. Besides that, from the outcome of that rape protest, you found out that we had a lot of counts in the petition. Number one, we were calling for the president to announce rape as a national emergency, all right, which has never been done in the history of Liberia. Making rape a national emergency, we know things that should follow these things. This policy has not fully been followed, but the fact that rape was announced or declared a national emergency in Liberia sent a message to the population, to the world, that there are steps, in the right direction. And that was as the result of that protest. Another thing that came out of that protest, and announcing rape as a national emergency, that's like the first time in the history of Liberia. Also the first time in the history of Liberia that a national SGBV conference was called by the president to address rape issues, which of course I had the opportunity to have been invited to. And I know at that conference, the conference led to a 3 years roadmap that was laid out to fight domestic violence, which if it's followed, according to the roadmap, rape and domestic violence should be reduced up to 30%. That is by 2023. So that roadmap is with the ministerial agenda through the task force, and it's a national policy document that has everything in it to end rape if possible, but to reduce the increase of rape by 30% by 2023. Also, you realize that as a result of the protest, a DNA machine that we placed, because that was one of our comments as well in the petition for the government to purchase DNA machine that has been used for for evidence preservation. And in 2021, if I'm not, I stand to be corrected, February 2021, there was a DNA machine bought by the government and dedicated at the Ministry of Gender. We know that during the course of the protest, in 2019, we did a small protest called the March for Justice, where we met the president, and there was an initial statement made by the president that he was going to make initial $2 million available in the national budget, specifically to fight rape and domestic violence. And that was reiterated in 2020. So it was to our surprise in 2021, July, when the House of Legislatures was passing a special budget, there was 0% in that special budget, which was to run from July to December of 2021. There was $0 in the budget for rape. And we saw the need that, no, you cannot do this, Mr. President, and our lawmakers. You promised us that you are going to put money in the budget specifically to fight rape. So we took on the street again. We took on the Capitol building. I remember we stormed the Capitol building one morning, calling out every single lawmakers at the Capitol building that day, that bringing our attention to the promise that he made to us 1 year ago, backdating to 2021, that regardless of this budget being a special budget, you call it special budget, it still doesn't stop rape from happening between July to December. Every week in Liberia, according to the UOMI, more than 3 girls are being raped. So if you're counting the weeks between January to December, that's a lot of weeks. So if you're averaging 3 girls per week to be raped, you're talking about over 30 to 50% being raped. So what can be done about it? So they try to give a reason why money cannot be in the budget. And then we told them, once you cannot put money in the budget to fight rape in the special budget, we are not going to go home. We will stay here. We'll storm this Capitol building until something is being done. So they were on break. Coming back, I remember they said they were coming back August 4th from their agricultural break, where they were going to have a joint convention. And we promised them that August 4th, we are going to be at that joint chamber to ensure that there's money placed in the budget. And if they don't put that there, we're going to main us. And to our surprise, before they came back, I don't know, they were on the agriculture break when they worked things out. Before they came back for the agriculture break, there was a $250,000 allocation in the budget for rape, for that special budget I ran from January to December. I mean, $250,000 is not a lot to fight rape, we know that, but it's something to keep the fight against rape for the number of months before we get to the actual budget. So we know that the road to ending violence in this country is long, but we also do know that there are lots and lots of achievement. There are lots of efforts that are being placed. Look at the work SOAP is doing. SOAP is doing an amazing job with community people, with inmates, and there are a lot of different local and international NGOs in Liberia that is working for my institution as well. Individually, I'm working on different projects with different institutions, going to the counties. I know that between August last year to now, I've been able to visit all the 15 counties, just talking about rape and domestic violence in these places. And it's not easy to go to these places, but we are doing the work. So we cannot just, close our eyes and say we have done nothing, even though we know we are not there yet. But we still believe that with the effort of everybody, that is the young people, that is the pastors, that is the imams, the women of Liberia, the men, and all of these different small groups, all of these different small Zoom meetings. I know the entire protest in 2020 started from a Zoom meeting conversation that we started having because we could not meet. It was locked down. So we're having a small Zoom meeting with our friends, and then these things started to come to our attention. It was similar thing like this that started an entire, a wave of action that we took, and it brought change. It set history, and lots and lots of people who could not speak for themselves, who believe that they don't have the voice. We were able to come out, to to do something about it. So these are some of the, one or two things that we've been able to do to achieve one or two goals. Yeah.
Once again, Aaron, I applaud you. You're doing excellent work, and I'm very glad that you are vocal. You need to be vocal. Young people need to be vocal. Our leaders need to be held accountable for the promises that they make. There is this thing where you call performative justice, right? Where when the cameras are on, people agree to do certain things. When the cameras are off, right? They
You
don't
find nobody's
honor,
working.
they don't honor
Yes.
what they said that they were going to do. And sometimes they do need to be pressured to do what is right. So I applaud you all. Keep protesting.
And I'll tell you for sure, I mean, the Minister of Gender, like, they're our family. Like I said, Sis Lovett is like a mother to us. But the truth is, when these things come up, we put family on one side and we go for what we believe in. Many times on different occasions, we've had different, confrontation with the minister, with the deputy minister, Sis Lovett. But we go there because we know what we believe in, and we understand that behind us, there are a lot of young people who experience these things. Some of us have had first-hand experience of domestic violence. That's why we're into this fight. That's why we're protesting. So all of these things, we know that there are some people who just want to come on the camera, but we also know that there are other sincere people who are behind the camera, who don't even like to be on the camera, but they are behind the scene. They are doing great jobs. They are doing a lot of amazing things. It was surprising to know these are the people who are achieving a lot of things.
Once again, I commend you. You brought up Sis Lovett several times. I actually had an opportunity to work with her at the beginning of the program. I did a shout out to her, but I don't know if she heard me, so I'll do it again. Lovett, hello. Hello, I see you posted some comments in the chat. I just want to commend you for the work that you have done for the GBV division of the Ministry of Gender. She is someone who is very, very knowledgeable about issues of SGBV and very, very passionate, very hard worker. So during the brief time that I was there, I was honored to work with her. So hello, Lovett. So now we're going to open it up for discussion so everyone can turn their cameras on. Those of you who are viewing the program on Facebook, if you have any questions, if you could just please put your questions in the comments section, and I will submit your comments to the relevant panelists. So we're going to open it up. Let's see here. Councilor Gabriel, can you please turn your camera on so everyone can see? There you are. And Reverend Cannon. So the conversations and the presentations, you all mentioned the fact that most of the victims and survivors that are raped are young children. You all have recounted stories of children being brutally raped. Why do you think children are the major targets in Liberia when it comes to rape? And this is open to everyone. This is not, directed to a specific panelist. Why are children targets?
Should I go first?
Yes, you can go first. Jump in.
Well, for me personally, I think we can't really pin a specific reason why we think why children are, being raped. But what I think from what I've seen in my experience, I feel like children are vulnerable. There are a lot of children who are vulnerable, who are, exposed to these things. And sometimes parents or care or guidance are not aware of situations that leads to abuse. and stuff like that. Like take for example, you will find out that you'll find somebody telling a baby say they want my huevo. And then the family of that, or the mother or father of that child will laugh about it. For me, nobody can tell my little sister, say you my wife, because I know she's only supposed to be wife one time, and the time is not now. Because the thing about rape or sex, it's an issue of the mind. Once these things start to register in the mind of the person, that out of these small things they're saying, it's okay with the family, it's okay with the mother, I can advance, I can do anything. Even if they have problem with it, we'll settle it, we'll talk about it. So I feel like people should be aware and sensitive about things, especially when it comes to protecting children, because children are vulnerable. The law said they are minors; they cannot make decisions for themselves. They can make informed consent. So, as a guardian and a parent, it is your duty to be able to protect your child. It's a duty to know what's right and what's wrong. How can a person relate to your child? And it goes beyond saying, even there are some parents who just leave their children loose. And also there are some parents who feel like they owe people, because this person is helping me, so I can't do this. Like in 2017 with the case of Mariah Willie, it's very common in Liberia, where somebody can take that child and say, please help educate my child, and because the person is educating your child, it does not give them a right to abuse that child. It doesn't. So even if the person abuses your child, you ought to take legal actions, because we have come across so many cases of mothers who have compromised rape cases on the basis of, oh, I'm a husband, and I don't want anything to go to court, and the man taking care of the whole family. All those things, there are reasons why there are increase of rape, of children being raped and sexually abused. So when we start to look at these things, one, parents need to pay keen attention to their kids. Two, people need to be aware that there are certain things you don't tell to children. You don't expose your children to things early enough. You need to be aware of the people, the kind of conversations your child is having. You need to be aware of the kind of people that come around your children. You need to be aware that regardless of somebody helping your child, it does not give them a right to abuse that child. So just because you're taking care of the family, that is their responsibility. That's what you asked to do. That's up to you. But it does not give you right to abuse that child. And if that person abused that child, it's also the duty of the parent to take that person to court or to the legal authority. So that's my own personal view on that.
Okay, thank you. So grooming of children, perpetrators or predators grooming children, and then also inappropriate relationship with children. These are some of the things that came up during a focus group discussion that I was doing with some men. And I remember one of the pastors touched on that, said, if any man comes to my house and calls my daughter his wife, is going to be a problem. I will hurt that person. That is not an appropriate relationship to have with a child. I open it up to the rest of the panelists. Why are children being raped?
Well, I think that Aaron said a lot about that. These kids are vulnerable, and it's sad to say, but most parents just don't care. I think we're in a generation where people are concerned about making money, concerned about self, and you see a lot of young kids are out there fending for themselves. You will have instances. I had an instance once where a driver for an institution that I worked for mistakenly rolled, the bus was reversing and rolled over a child. The child instantly died. Now, where was that parent? Where was that parent? I remember once I had my daughter in a convenience store, and for 10 seconds, I didn't find her. And that situation was like, wow. So we need to make time to put our children first. And we don't see that a lot. And also, the kids, most of the time, will not say anything because they are threatened. The older the kids are, they will speak. They would tell their story. They would say what happened to them. But normally, these young babies are threatened. If you do this, you will die, and this and the, and so most of them don't say anything until it's too late. So that's what I believe, that parents need to do a better job. Some parents rely on the school, and you cannot leave parenting to teachers. It needs to start from the home. And so now that's another area where things happen. At the school, teachers who are not caring like teachers were in the past, because one, teachers are underpaid, all kinds of things are happening, and they're taking advantage of their students. Okay, and so we need to do better, and I'm happy. I was so elated to see Aaron Island on this call and speaking, because we need every generation involved. We need every sector of our community involved. And so to see that young man getting in front of the embassy, going to the House of Representatives, we have hope. We have hope. And we need to do more to support them. Now, we go into the government. The government is not the only group. If the government was committed and the rest of the community is not committed, we will still have an issue. So this is something that the private sector needs to be involved in. The public sector needs to be involved in. Communities need to be involved in. The religious community, okay? All of us need to be involved. And you have the international NGOs. They cannot do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves by being our brother's keeper. Message complete.
I completely agree with you.
I like
Especially
it when Mr. Williams said message complete.
message complete, right? I like the point that he made about the international NGO. I think even in Aaron's presentation, he talked about this roadmap and this, white paper and, this initiative. And we have had so many different initiatives supported by all of these donor organizations. Every few years, there's another one with another name, right? And a lot of times it's targeting the same issues. How effective are these roadmaps? I think a lot of times it just seems as though, and we go back to the performative aspect of things, after government is pressured to do something, then they say, okay, we put together this conference or this forum, right? All the big shots come to the conferences and the forums and so forth. And then we're going to draft, a roadmap based on the recommendations that were made. And then at the end of the day, a lot of times the papers are just kind of set aside to collect dust, and it doesn't result in anything tangible, no tangible changes. So thank you for bringing up the international NGOs and stuff. I'm not saying that we don't need them. We do need them. They're doing great work. I've worked for a lot of international NGOs and so forth. But as Dr. Williams also mentioned, the importance of there is a grassroots aspect to it. In Liberia, we always think that yes, government is supposed to do everything, but it's a collaboration to be able to deal with these issues. In your communities, the government can just do so much, especially when it comes to a parent. If your child is raped, right? A family member might be the perpetrator, but because you want this person to continue to support you financially, you decide to not address the issue, to not make your child's safety priority just for the sake of money. How much can the government do to force you, to do the right things, right? To force you to do the right thing. So no, there are different stakeholders that are part of this, and we need to come together to bring about the changes that we need in our country. And I say our country because a lot of people don't think I'm Liberian. They don't know. They don't know. So let me put it out there. I am Liberian, and that's why all these things mean so much to me. I am a Liberian since 2005. I've been doing work in Liberia and so forth. So these things mean a lot to me because, you know, it is my country and these children are our children. And something needs to be done. So anyone else want to jump in? Why are children being raped in Liberia?
Yes, I'd like to just add a few points to what others have said. I think, as I said earlier, exposing our children also to explicit content on whether television or the internet is another issue. Another one is the kind of conversation we also hold with the children. We need to create that awareness to also talk to them because they are, we may walk in the danger without knowing. And mind you, these people who we call our brothers, who are their uncles, are the very people who perpetrate these acts. So we need to conscientize our children. I mean, talk to them, and to also teach about good parenting. Also, like Dr. Williams said, we are always busy. How many times do we already check even the copybooks of our children? All we know, we pay the school fees, they're doing well, we see the report card. But what time do we actually have to sit with them? Sometimes they have burning issues to tell us. Sometimes something they are observed and they want to bring it to our attention. But we are just too busy to be there, to sit down and just talk, to listen to them, to give them the day. And out of that, you can hear a lot of stuff. So these are the things that we need to do. And I think whether in Sunday school, whether in the actual school itself, whether in our homes, our community, we need to pay attention to our children. And when we start paying attention, it will also help to minimize some of these things that are taking place. That's my own take. Yeah.
Thank you, Reverend Cannon. Councilor Gabriel, I'd like to hear what you have to say regarding this issue.
Thank you very much. My colleagues have spoken well on the issue. And there is not a need to repeat all that they have said, and I do agree with them, except that we again come back to say that one of the reasons why children are the continued victims of these predators, these monsters who surreptitiously enter homes with smiling faces, yet with deep and dark agenda, are not easily detected because our people again don't have the requisite education, how to detect these signals. How do they know that a predator has entered? How can they discern that danger has come upon them? If a man comes from out and he begins to call your daughter my girlfriend, my wife, a child in a very tender age, and you're calling her my wife, my girlfriend, there and then, for me, it goes without delay for that parent who has gotten the maximum education of the danger in the eyes of the predator who is coming under that friendly atmosphere. They can easily detect and, get rid of them. If they don't have they are not trained to be able to detect those, to discern those danger, those signals of danger coming into the home. Obviously, they will fall to them and they will be victim as well, because normally rape takes place within the family. I was the director of the SGBV crimes unit when Honorable Mariah Willie was accused. And I tell you very frankly, I drove to Grand Juda County with the former head of the Women and Children Division of the police, called Colonel Aliu Belete, now Attorney Aliu Belete, who now works for the SGBV crimes unit, son in Nimba. We went to Grand Juda County twice we went to Grand Juda. We were unable to unravel any evidence in the Mariah Willis case because, again, we'll go back to say the issue of compromise. The issue of compromise. The girl was sent by the family to live with, I think his uncle was the driver to Mariah Willie. The father of the little girl's brother was the driver to Mariah Willie. And because he was being fed by Mariah's Willie, they all live in Mariah Willie's fence. And the police were even able to arrest Mariah Willie and his wife. Once upon a time, we asked the police to arrest them. They came to Central. But again, we could not hold them because when rape takes place, in the evidence gathering process, you must have the victims and the victim relatives cooperating. In that instance, the victims relatives were not cooperating. They received some United States dollars from Mariah Willie, and they were able to use that as a scheme to cover up. They moved the girl quickly to Grand Judea, and when we pursued her to Grand Judea, in fact, one of the chiefs told me, you said you going, what's a Sled Town or one of the towns that we said that we were going?
They said
He told me if you go to a Sled Town, you wouldn't return. And that was said in the face of the superintendent. And because we brought the issue up with the superintendent and other members of his council were there when he made that statement. And my colleague Billy and I said, "Look, let's leave it." As much as the girl's mother, the girl's uncle, who was a driver to Mariah's Willie, was not prepared to cooperate. I think the father also was not prepared to cooperate. We couldn't do much. That case was swept under the carpet. The letter was taken to the Ivory Coast and then later sent to Ghana. The case is today in abeyance. The case cannot come up because the victim relatives received money and they decided to compromise the case. There are top government officials involved in the commission of rape on a daily basis in Liberia, but because they have money, our country is suffering. The economy has shrunk, has dwindled so much to the extent that people are willing to accept little of nothing, peanuts, to compromise the life of their children. Small money. There are ministers who are carriers of terrible diseases. They are abusing underage children and giving their relatives, buying land for them, building houses, and that is just sufficient to appease them. This fight, I'm glad that young Ariel raised the issue of a DNA machine. Like I've always said, there is much empathy of the entire society towards rape. But if we're living in a contemporary society where you have a DNA, most of the cases that we want and that the defense could not even appeal from, if our cases were appealed from and they went to Supreme Court, I can assure you that most of the cases will be overturned. You know why? Our evidence are not compelling and weighty enough. Why? Because you don't have scientific proof. Most of the proof are just these casual proofs that we have that are not compelling enough to be able to, because if you accuse a man of the commission of rape, do you have a DNA report? Do you have a blood sample? Can you prove scientifically that the semen that was found in the victim is the semen of the defendant? But we don't go that route because be it the prosecution, be it the defense, we are all empathetic towards rape, victims and survivors. That is a good, trajectory that we can all move on to curb the commission of rape in the country. But our children are raped because our people are hungry, they are disparaging, they are languishing in the abject poverty and destitution. They don't have money. So when a wealthy man comes in the family and abuses one of the children, all he does is that he gives money. He uses money as a shield. And that man is protected. Nobody says a thing. If another person says, he talked about domestic. Now let me come in to say our laws are harmonized. The age of majority in our country is 18. I've had many experiences with fuller people who can go marry this 30-year-old, 14-year-old girls and bring them to, to Liberia and say, that's my wife. And they're using the girls and born children by them. Again, to succeed in the procuring process of evidence, you must obtain the cooperation of the victim relatives. But fuller people can go bring their children when you talk, they say, the domestic relation age is 16 years. There is nothing like that on our book. Our law is harmonized. If you have sex with any child that is less than 18, there is no consent. They don't have power to consent. Children are always victims because they are not protected. They don't have security. They are easily lured. They are easily persuaded. They are vulnerable. That is the key word young Ireland used. And I'm in total agreement. So I will pause there. The rest of the panelists have spoken very well. And I think we are all on the same page. I do agree with everything that we have said. Thank you. I pause there.
Thank you, Councillor Gabriel. You touched on so many different issues, some having to do with the privilege of government officials who are involved in certain acts. I think one thing we didn't really talk about that much is the statutory rape aspect of it. You know, I have seen incidences of grown men out in the open with 16-year-old girls considered their girlfriends, you know? And a lot of times people just excuse that sort of behavior. I remember when I was serving in a particular post in the former government, there was a government official who impregnated a 16-year-old distant cousin of mine. And of course, you know, he paid off the father. The mother was very upset about it. And he will walk into the mother's house and demand a level of respect. You know, he would say to her, well, how come every time I walk in here, you're frowning? Why should the woman not frown when you impregnated her daughter, when she specifically told you that this girl is 16 and you should stay away from her? But because you feel as though you're privileged enough, you just do whatever it is that you want to do. And, you know, have sexual relations with this young woman and impregnate her and just pay off her father. And, you know, that resolves the issue for you. So thank you for some of those points that you.
Let me just quickly interrupt by saying there was one assistant minister at the Ministry of Health. I remember that was in 2017. I indicted him. We arrested him. We went to court. While we're in the process of going to trial, he got released. When he got released, oh, that created a serious sensation in town. The women were angry how this man got off our hook. The court has granted a bond. We had to move the court to set the bond aside and order him rearrested. Today, that assistant minister is a fugitive. He's a fugitive because he escaped justice. I'm told that he went to Sierra Leone. He was a very good friend of mine, but when it came to the tax of, performing my prosecutorial tax, we moved on him and he fled. They were nice. We were out with the police looking for him. This is something every Liberian should frown on. You see, government officials, police officers themselves are involved. Okay, you got to the rape, you have statutory rape, and of course, then you have rape, the general rape itself. Anybody can be raped, irrespective of age. You understand me? Of course, for the general rape, consent is a fighter. The person has to consent, all right? But for statutory rape, consent is not a fighter. No consent. Whether the woman agrees, the child agrees to have sex with you, and she entices you and put you in the mood, then you get, when they have sex, you are a predator. You are a monster. You must be arrested and prosecuted in line with the laws of the country. Okay? Our people laugh at things because all because they are poor. One big government minister who comes from nowhere takes, the daughter of a struggling family, and he begins to give her back arrest, cartons of fish and chicken and the rest of it. It's just sufficient to sell the right of that child, who will be a very great future leader of our country. I mean, the child right is being mortgaged, it's been sold out to that monster who goes into the home and abuses the child. And sometimes they leave that child with horrible diseases. They leave that child with trauma. When you abuse a woman, you kill that woman 7 times. When you rape a woman, you kill her 7 times. I've always said that. So our people will smile at that, all because, Reverend, they are not educated. They don't know. They don't know how to discern. They don't know how to use their feelers, how to put up the antennas. When your antenna is up, you can easily detect the wave of danger. You will know who is a person of danger to your family, and you are able to resist them as quickly as possible. But we don't have that. We don't have the machinery to provide the education. All our people in Liberia are concentrated in Monrovia. As Ireland, when he wanted to belly Fasama to advocate or to provide prevention, Reverend William, when he wanted to belly Baloma, when he went to Sobloma, Bokesa, and the rest of the places. But the guys are out sitting down in Monrovia. Monrovia is not Liberia. Reverend Sia, when he went to Bokonjide. When last? Oh, they run and go on the quota to leave from Monrovia to Cape Mount and to come here because those places are short and easily accessible. But are they excluding Bokonjide? Are they excluding Bele Fasama? Are they excluding Padame? Are they excluding where in Grand Jide? CVS, CVR in Grand Jide on the gold mines? Are they excluding those? Are those places not part of Liberia? Those are now the number of rape that are not reported on a daily basis. Rape that are reported. The amount that are not reported. Far more than what is reported on the daily. Just a little fraction. And a new portion of it is being reported on a daily basis. I'm sorry, but I pause. I stop there.
Thank you. What we're going to do, since we're about to wrap up, time has been well spent. I've enjoyed this conversation, and so have our audiences today. There's so many insightful comments in the comment section of the Facebook page. So when we're done with this, please feel free to go and check it out. I'm going to ask everyone, as we're wrapping up, to just make their last statements. How do you want to wrap this conversation up?
Let me start because let me start.
Yes, please go ahead, Councilor.
I want to say here, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. I want to say here that Liberia is one of the countries that is nearly in red when it comes to the commission of rape. Our country is far behind when it comes to modern technology, when it comes to training police officers, medical practitioners, doctors, how to conduct investigation and medical examination when it comes to rape matters. There are nurses and doctors who are not trained to it, who are not even able to do it. So they come to testify and they mess the prosecution case up. So in some instances, we have to send them back, and in the process, sometimes we lose track and sometimes end up losing the case. We need our officers to be trained. Our doctors and nurses need to be trained. We need a strong publicity wing that will disseminate the information, how to prevent, how to report, how to arrest people, prosecute them for compromising rape. Arrest government officials who are involved in the commission of rape, no matter who they are, let them be arrested. And if they can, let young Ireland and the rest of the young people lead public demonstration. We will back them. And if they are arrested, we got a requisite credential to go to court to represent them. So I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. And I wrap it all by saying, with such a fight, with you involved, Reverend, I think we are getting somewhere, and we will soon have a final showdown. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Councilor Gabriel. I appreciate those kind words. Next person. final words? Dr. Williams?
Yes. Let me say that in 2021, in the first 6 months of the year, there were already 702 cases of rape that was reported, okay? So that means, of course, there were some that were not. And so we see that in our country, this is a major issue. I want to thank you for highlighting this. This is just one of many series that you have facilitated. And for that, I think it's a good thing, especially with me and my brothers on this call, okay? Men, the women say women or women, I say men or men. We have to play our role. We have to play our role. We have the church, a man, the leader in the church, we have a leader in the legal profession, and we have an advocate who is on fire. Let us combine our efforts. Let us work together. Let us recruit more men to see what we see. Let us recruit more men because we want Liberia to be a better place. That we can live together, that we can love one another, and be a country that others will dream to come to. Liberia was once that place that many came to for refuge. And we can be that nation once again. I believe that. And that's why I took a one-way ticket back home in 2007 to make a contribution to this nation. So again, thank you. Let's work together. Let's get it done. And let's save our babies. Message complete.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Well said. Thank you so much. We'll go on to Reverend Cannon, CA, and then Mr. Ireland. Reverend Cannon, are you there? Okay, Mr. Ireland.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, okay, okay. Your last words as we wrap up.
Oh, I just want to say thanks to you for organizing such a wonderful dialogue or engagement, and it's something that we really need to do. As a matter of fact, we are planning something at the church level where we could bring the Episcopal Church men and some pastors and imams from outside to talk about male engagement also. So it's something that we want to continue. It's not just like Arno said, that Ireland is saying that cameras, but also talking about the issue, coming up, living before the camera or behind the camera. But it's something that we need to talk about. The more we talk about, the more awareness we create, the most better and safer our society will be. So thank you and congratulations as you advance. We pray for the grace and anointing to fall upon you. And when you come to Liberia, you have a church to preach to. I gave you my pulpit. Okay.
Thank you, Reverend Cannon. My aunts, my grand aunts Mary will be smiling from heaven.
Yeah, indeed.
Smiling from heaven. God bless you. Continue to bless your ministry and all that you're doing, for our women and children in Liberia. You and your beautiful wife. You all will continue to be in my prayer and just continue to engage those faith leaders because we need them to be part of this SGBV fight. So thank you so much.
Amen. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you. So, Mr. Ireland.
Yes. So first of all, let me say that the fight against rape and domestic violence, it's a long road and it requires everybody's effort. In recent time, over the last couple of weeks that I've been in the Southeast and hard to reach communities, I've realized that rape and domestic violence is occurring more in those areas than in Monrovia. Worst case scenario is that those places are where the cases are not being registered. Cases are not being taken serious. So it is my appeal to government, international community, local NGOs to reach out, because there is a need for inclusion when it comes to the fight against rape and domestic violence. What do I mean? If you notice during Madam Salif days, there was a section that was created at the police station called the Women and Children Protection Section. That place, that section of the police is not just there to receive cases. That section of the police were created to be able to engage with community leaders, with community members, to have different town hall meetings about what should be done when these things happen. What can community people look for? What can the leaders of the community do to help the community be a safe space for everybody? And it's not being done. We need to revamp all of these traditional, methods that we have. I realized that in all of the counties that I went to in the Southeast, the one-stop center that was created in those different government hospitals, they're barely working. They barely have social workers there because the people got to go make living. They can't get paid. There's no equipment. All of these things need to be put in place. All right. Just having a comprehensive document, quote unquote, called roadmap does not address the issue. But what's in this roadmap? How can we engage everybody? The reason why people keep calling on government, because government alone cannot do it alone. But if government can see it that they cannot do it alone and start to include other people, like the churches, like the mosques, like different institutions, the youth, and not seeing them as political oppositions, not seeing us in the streets when we go to protest. We only enter the streets because we see that that's the only place that we go, that our voices are being heard faster and louder. So these things need to be addressed. We're not politicians. We're not oppositions. We are only here because what's happening has the propensity of destroying the entire future of this nation, and we can't sit and allow that to happen. So for me, I was telling a group of young people the other day that if we're just arresting everybody in the country that are loving to honor 18 years old or girls, the entire government will wear plenty of people there. We will not have a government, and I'm not even afraid to say that, because I know there are a lot of them who are the same people who are making the laws. They are the one breaking the laws. So all of these things, we need to tackle them from every angle. If you notice, one thing that the protest in 2020 brought was everybody was involved. At that protest, you had the imams, you had the priests, you have pastors, you have people from traditional council. But what happened after it? Where did all of them go? Where did they take all of these small messages that they brought at the protest? Where are these messages now? How are they preaching them? Who are they telling about it? So these are things we need to start doing. Not to take out of the time, but
because we only have 6 more minutes, Aaron.
Yeah, I can be too emotional to talk about this. So I just want to appreciate you for this opportunity, and I appreciate all of the men who are fighting behind the scenes to make sure that rape in Liberia. We see you, we see what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing. We're here as young people, and every time you need us, I'm very much available. You can reach out at any time, and let's keep fighting. I know this is rare for a young man to say, let's keep fighting, but yes, we're gonna keep doing what we're doing, and one day something's gonna happen. Thank you also for having me. It's been an honor to sit with all of these amazing fathers of mine to share a platform like this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Aaron. It's interesting because I had also planned on having a forum with just young people, and my son was going to join us, but that was not possible.
I look forward to that.
But I will be contacting you, and we will surely do that.
Sure.
So thank
you so much.
So I want to thank our audiences in the US and our audiences in Liberia for tuning in today in this very, very important topic. Thank you so much for your comments and taking time out of your schedule to watch us and be a part of this forum. So the next forum that we'll have, as I said to Aaron, will be a conversation with young people about SGBV. So God bless all of you and have a pleasant evening. And those of you in the US, have a pleasant afternoon. Goodbye, everybody.
All right, thank you so much.
Bye-bye.